Hello y'all on YouTube, this is Rob with Rob's Nerdy Knives. Today I have a very special review, impressions of a knife that I bought for a good friend of mine for their birthday. And I wanted to kind of do a review, impressions of this, because I hadn't really used it a whole lot, but I did, carry it a little bit around the house, around my desk, and flick it and kind of get a feel for it. And I wanted to talk about it because I think this is really quite a gem of a knife. So let's talk a little bit about this. The knife manufacturer is CJRB, as you can see right there, CJRB, which is a subsidiary of Artisan Cutlery. They're the kind of budget end of Artisan Cutlery, which makes some really great knives. Man, fantastic value for your money when you look at CJRB. I really think they've got a lot of things. They're the guys who make the pyrite. They've made a bunch of other things like the feldspar. They're just really some fantastic knives, liner locks and button locks and what have you. Really, really great knives that I cannot recommend enough. This right here is the Riff. And this is a large, full-size knife. They make these. And so let's talk a little bit about the designer. I believe it's an in-house design. I don't know who that is, but I believe it is just CJRB who designed it. So that's the manufacturer. Let's talk about the materials. This is G10. Nicely textured. You can see it's some really nice texturing on that G10, so that gives you good grip on the handles. I really like that a lot. I think that really gives this knife some good functionality and some good grip, so I like that. Again, the steel, it's a steel liner. All the way through, so the G10 is laid over on the top. We have T6 screws around here, and I think it's a T8. Yeah, T8 and pivot, T6s. I wish they were T8s, but this is a budget line, so we'll just accept that for what we get for a budget, right? I mean, that's okay. Deep pocket carry clip gives you really nice deep pocket carry, as you can see, pretty hidden. You have a lanyard hole. For those of you who love lanyards, you definitely can access that lanyard hole. It is not prioritized, which I do like. It still has a little tip that sticks out, which is fine. It has two standoffs. This is all black, and the blade is black, and the standoffs are silver. So sometimes that can be a nice accent, or it could be like kind of stand out. So, it depends on what you think. You have the button, which is not black as well, and the standoffs aren't black. So, I mean, kind of balances out, if you will, kind of makes it look intentional, along with the blade stop pin right there. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't mind it, and I don't think it looks terrible. I think it's a nice accent, if you will. Sort of like little chrome edging or chrome accents on a car or something, I think. So, anyways, it is a flipper. All right, and it does have a fuller hole right here. And so all of those are very capable of using it to open. And this is a flat ground. I would call this I don't know if you call this a clip point. I wouldn't call this like a Bowie or anything, maybe a drop point. I don't know. Technically, it's not clipped. It's more like a drop. So you can call it what you want. Definitely has a belly on the blade. So drop, Bowie, clip, modified, whatever you want to call. So Blade Police, you tell me what it is. It is a pretty good sized knife. Now, this is ARRP M9, which is the Artisan Cutlery proprietary steel. It's a powdered steel made into a budget line. So this is a really good value. You get a powdered steel, which gives you a lot of benefits, like to be a lot better than like D2 steel for sure. Would I say it's up there with 14C28N? No, but it's a step below, but it's certainly, it competes. It's up there probably with Nitro V. I would say it's up there with some other budget steels as well. So I think you can't go wrong with that. So I think you get great value for what you get. It's nicely centered, as you can see right out of the box. The flipper works really nicely. Now, there's no jimping on the flipper, right? There's jimping on the top of the blade right there. So the spine of the blade definitely has some nice jimping. But it works both as a push button and as a light switch. And this is a pretty heavy duty size blade. It's got some weight to it, right? Definitely got some weight to it. So when you grip this, you can choke up with the jimping, which is really nice. There's no trigger place that I would say is safe to put your finger. I would say it's a full grip like that. I have medium to medium large hands. My hands are large widthwise, medium lengthwise. So I have plenty of room here. And I would say an extra large to maybe even double extra large would have room. You get up to much larger than that, you're probably going to be down to 3 fingers, probably Shaquille O'Neal size hands, right? Get really gigantic. So there's that. I do think there's a lot to be said about this knife. You've got the flipper, you've got the fuller that works really great, both left and right-handed, right? So, and the nice thing about it being left and right-handed, you can see there's 2 holes, and the deep pocket carry clip is not recessed into the scale, so it sits right on the outside, but it has access for both sides. So this is a reversible clip for lefties and righties. So lefties rejoice, you can definitely use this knife, which makes sense with the Buttonlock, because as a lefty over here, it's going to work really well. And really, without having a choke up place, there's no place you're going to get to where you're going to really press that button to disengage it. And it doesn't disengage until you're well in there. And so I don't have any way to disengage it as I'm using it, because I'm not choking up. And even if I choke up here, I'm not going to choke up and hit that button. So that's pretty safe. Now, I will tell you, it's a button lock. And I always recommend, button locks are not hard, heavy duty use. You're not going to be out chopping woods with it, try to break things open. Just by nature of a what they call a plunge lock, it does come in at an angle into the tang of the blade. It fits into a little groove that's kind of angled like that, and it comes in. And so you have this tang of the blade going against an angle, which is very similar to what you find with a frame lock or a liner lock, right? But you do have the ability, because there's a spring in there that disengages it, that wants to push it up, right? The spring, depending on how strong that spring is, if you have vibration, it can allow that spring to move down, right? And so if you want to do a whack test, you could at some point, I think at a right angle, hard enough whack, you're going to disengage that. And if you do, and the spring is not strong enough, then I would recommend taking it apart and stretching out the spring just a little bit, making it a stronger spring, right? That sometimes causes it to have a little bit of lock stick. So, it's one of those things where what's comfortable for you and what are you going to use this knife for? Are you going to be whacking and stuff for it? So that's the button lock, right? So you've got to keep that in mind, and that's the mechanism, how it works and engages the knife. I would say the action is beautiful. It's caged ceramic ball bearings on the inside, so it works really nicely with both front and left thumb and reverse flicking. And the button lock, of course, also allows you to button lock it as well. So that's really, really nice. So as well, the handle, all the stuff chamfered all the way around. Like I said, jimping up here is really comfortable. You've got textures. It's not a knife you're going to drop. This fuller, now you can get stuff in there if you're cutting wet and nasty stuff, right? You've got a micro swedge right there, I guess, for turning. It's very micro, but this is going to be a very functional knife. It'll retain it's pretty sharp coming out of the box, and ARRP M9 is going to be easy to hone and sharpen up. So it's a nice budget steel to really sharpen up well. I like that a lot, right? So there you go. And let's see here. We talked about the front flipper. We talked about the fuller. We talked about the button. Those are all ways to deploy. We talked about the jimping, the shapes, and all that good stuff. Let's talk a little bit about the measurements. Let's weigh this guy, because it is a big knife. Let's see how much this weighs. All right. Yeah, so 5.4 ounces. 5.4 ounces, right? So that's heavy. If we look at this, let's look at the inside. There is no milling relief of the liners, of the steel liners. That really could have gone a long way. I think you could have taken an ounce, at least an ounce off of this knife. I wish they would have considered it, but someone who likes big knives, if you want a substantive knife that feels strong and big, this is going to be it. You're going to enjoy this. This is definitely going to be that knife for you, and you're going to have some weight to it. So 5.4 ounces, that's a pretty good amount. So let's go ahead and measure the length of the knife. Let me get my ruler over here, which is out of the way. All right, so here we go. All right, so we are looking at a knife overall that's just over 8 inches. I'm going to say it's 8 1/4 inches. Yeah, 8 1/4 inches long. For the blade to the handle, we're talking about a little over, right at 3.5 inches. I would say exactly, maybe just slightly over 3.5 inches. Cutting length, if we go cutting length to the edge, we're just a little over 3.5 inches. I'm going to say we're at 3 and I want to say 5/8 of an inch. So, it's definitely not under 3 inches. So if you're in a place where you can't carry over 3 inches, you got to keep that in mind. Let's look at the handle for where you can put your hands. You got a full 4 inches, which is a pretty good size. Typically, medium to larger knives are going to have like 3.5 up to 4 inches. 4 inches, I would say, is pretty good. Now, there's no finger choil where you can give a little extra on there, but that's fine. It'll work, right? So, nice. All right, so let's go ahead and measure the blade stock thickness real quick. Let me zero that out. Oops. All right, so we'll go ahead and measure that. So we're 160 hundredths of an inch. 160 hundredths of an inch. So, that's a fair amount. Or that's 15 hundredths. I forget how you do that. I think it's 160 hundredths of an inch or 160 thousandths of an inch. I forget. Boy, anyways, it is well, oops, let me get it. There we go. Oh, wait, hold on. Let me measure that again. Was I wrong? Oh, so it's like 0.15. It keeps getting a different measurement. Okay, well, let's zero that out. Let's do that again. Yeah, it's about 0.15 inches, 0.148. So 0.148 inches. So it's right between 1/10 and 2/10 of an inch. So there you go. It's a pretty hefty blade stock. 0.12 is usually about a good size. Your 0.1, it's a pretty thin, slicey blade. You get the really big, thick, heavy stock blades. They tend to be up to 0.15, 0.16, 0.18 kind of inches. But this is 0.15, 0.148. So that's a pretty robust blade for as much blade as you get here. It has some heft to it, and that allows it to have that beautiful drop too with the gravity. So there we go. That's the measurements. All right, knife category is absolutely a budget knife. I believe this one was around $69, $70, if I'm not mistaken. If I'm wrong, I will have it in the comments down below, the description down below. But this is a pretty, for the size of knife that you get and what you pay, this is a great deal. I think this is absolutely, if you're looking for a bigger budget knife, you're going to be happy with this, right? If you want a small budget knife, it may not be for you, but sometimes you just need a big knife, and you would rather to have a bigger knife that's more can fill your hands if you've got larger hands or you have a bigger task to do. And I've noticed here, if you look at the actual plunge lock, it does engage the blade fairly well. I would say there's probably a good 30% engagement on the tang of the blade there. That plunge lock is pretty deep, and you don't have an issue with it hitting back and forth, going up and down like some of the other button locks where they're not, the part of the button lock comes and engages again. This is absolutely nice and clear of that. So I like that. Definitely a budget blade. Purpose, everyday EDC. Absolutely everyday EDC. As far as I'm concerned, if you're looking for an EDC knife that you want to carry for every day, this is a great one right here. I think you'd be very, very happy with this. This would work really well for you. So I would carry this, to work, to do maybe heavy duty tasks. Like I said, I wouldn't cut logs. I wouldn't be banging and stuff, but I think it's a fairly good knife for stuff like that. You just have to be careful. There's a button lock and you can disengage it. You don't want to disengage it. Now, the nice thing is if you do disengage it, this lock right here, this tang of the blade right here is going to really catch in your hand. It's not going to go past that. It would pinch on you, and you would have to be way up here for something like that to happen. So if you've got a good presentation, a solid grip, even if you lock that, it's still gonna, it may temporarily disengage, but it shouldn't go past that, right? If nothing else, it'll pinch the snot out of your finger if you're doing something crazy or wackadoodle with your knife, right? That's just something you have to consider. But I think this is absolutely a wonderful knife to carry. I said in my unboxing that this is so cool that I'd like to get one. I'd like to get one for my car. I think this would be a great car knife to have in there because it's big enough, robust enough. You want something you can really cut something. Like, if your car, one of your axles gets a whole bunch of rope or something that's in the middle of the road, you got to cut it up or something, whatever. You never know what you might need a knife for, especially if you're traveling or you're going somewhere. It's always good to have a knife to be able to cut things away. If something gets in your tire, something gets underneath your car, you have to clear out, whatever. It's always a great purpose thing to have for yourself, for as a tool. I think it'd be a great tool to have. So that's what I would like. I think this would be really cool for that purpose. So anyways, let's talk a little bit about the ergos and the feel. Handle design. So the handle design I like. It's a robust handle design. It's got a nice little curve here in the back. Doesn't dig into your hand. Has that curve where you can get a good grip and it really fills your hand in nicely. The clip doesn't burn anywhere. It's got the chamfering all the way around, and it's even got a little cut out here. That's really nice. Get very comfortable presentation, really to use your hand well. So I like that handle design a lot. Works both left and right-handed really, really well. The button lock is certainly out of the way. There's no finger choke up, so you're going to accidentally engage the button if you're doing lefty and you want to come up. You really can't put your finger there. I would not recommend it. You're going to get too close to that. It's just not, I would say be safe, right? Don't do that. Deployment. I love the deployment. It's got a button. It's got a fuller that you can work both hands, and then it's got the button lock. So as far as fidget factor and fidgetability, deployment designs, jumping, you've got buttons, you've got the flipper, you've got the fuller. All those things give you a bunch of stuff. And so as far as what you could fidget with, before we talk about the fidget factor, I would say this is going to be definitely like an 8.5 to 9. I would maybe call it a 9 out of 10 as far as things you can do with this knife. It's very fidgety, so that's cool. But we'll talk about how good that fidget factor is in a second. Closing design, I like it. It's Cade ceramic ball bearings. So when you close it and that button disengages, it locks. And if you release it just right, it just closes in nicely. And you can see that, the plunge and how it acts like a detent, or that's like on a frame lock. Watch. See how it clicks right in? And it doesn't, there's not a whole lot of, there's maybe a little bit of wiggle down there, which is kind of typical sometimes of button locks, right? But there's no blade rock or anything like that. It's in there pretty solidly, but typically you got a bigger blade and a plunge. Unless this plunge was significantly bigger, I think this is not too unusual, right? So the cutaway and everything, to get to the plunge works really nicely. It locks up really well. It drops really nicely, so you can do it one-handed. I really like that. All right, so fidget factor. I said it was about a 9 out of 10. So out of that 9 out of 10, how well does it do? 100%. This is done really well. Even without the jimping on here, this flipper works really well. It's beautiful as a push button. It's beautiful as a light switch. You don't slide off. The blade has enough weight and oomph to it, and it's got enough leverage right there, being just level to just a little bit above the pivot. You just get a really nice solid flip. Can you fail this? Well, yeah, you can. See, I can fail that, sure. And if you don't like that and you want a little more of a detent-like feel, what we call a plunge resistance, I would take this apart and I would stretch that spring out a little bit, right? I could make it a little more resistant where it resists a little bit more. And that's a very easy fix. Now, I don't want to do that until I give this knife away to my buddy, because I want him to see if, does he like it like this, or does he want it a little more resistant? That's really up to him, right? I don't want to change the knife for him unless he wants it, and I'm happy to do that. Right? So closing, action, everything is really nice. Very, very comfortable, very useful design. I like everything about it. Really comfortable. Yeah, so fidget factor, I would give this like 100% out of that 9 out of 10. 8.5 out of 10 probably, somewhere around there. 8.5 out of 10 is the total maximum fidgety goodness that it has. And out of that fidgety goodness it has, I would say it's 100%. All that 8.5 out of 10 I can enjoy. And it works well. The fuller works just really, really nicely for reverse and front flicking. I mean, it's just a great place. You can use the media finger. You can get your nail in there. Oops, and almost cut myself there, right? You can get your nail in there. I was trying to point at that and flick it at the same time. Don't do that. Don't do a stupid thing like I just did. You can get your nail in there and flip it, and right? And so it works really nicely, I think. And I'm trying to do that nice and slow so you can see that, right? But you can also do a nice fast flick, right? And so it flicks really nicely as fast as well. You can see that. So yeah, I like that. I'm going to give it about 100%. Maybe, if I were to take any off, maybe I could maybe give it a 98 out of 100. But it's pretty darn close. I would round it up to, really great as far as fidgety goodness. Overall thoughts. I think this is a great knife. I think this is a great CJRB, another stellar CJRB. This is different. It is a larger knife. It is not a smaller knife, and it is a budget larger knife, which I like. It's nice to have options. If you want something a little bit bigger, it's always nice to have that option of a bigger knife. And I think this is cool. And I like what they offer. Even the jimping here, it's got a little design on here. I think that's cool. Chamfered all the way around. All these things really make this knife very comfortable. And I keep talking about the grip is nice. I don't have any hot spots. It works really well in hand, and it works really well left-handed and right-handed, right? So I can flip it and reverse flick it really nice both hands. That's important. So if you're lefty or righty, I think you would really enjoy that. For long term, I think this will be a great knife. I think you'll enjoy it, and I'm absolutely going to recommend this. It's going to be a recommended budget knife. Definitely a recommended budget knife or less expensive knife. I highly recommend this knife to anybody who's interested in something like that. So there you go. Those are my thoughts. Hey, if you enjoyed this review, would you consider hitting the like button down below? And if you've already hit that like button, would you consider hitting the subscribe button down below? Subscribing and liking the videos really helps out the channel, allows the channel to grow, allows us to do more things and produce more content, do more things for y'all. And if you've already done all of that, maybe consider hitting the notification button. That way you can be notified of future content. And also maybe check me out over on Instagram at robs_nerdy_knives. Again, that's on Instagram at robs_nerdy_knives. Hey, thanks so much for watching. You guys have a great day and a great week. Let me put that back there because I don't know why I put it away. Have a great day and a great week. Bye.